Welcome back to the High Elves Abridged. In the previous part we finished off our defences against Angmar, then we did some attacks, had a little one that went to take a big city, and we formed together a new decent looking army that went out and defeated a big Angmar force. We stole one of their territories, but now we're going to make a detour because I want to help the Dunedain taking a nearby territory by stopping this enemy reinforcement army from going to break their siege. They were the ones who came to attack me in the fight, possibly because I had the ballista and just the range advantage overall. First we shoot out with a few of their skirmishers and that doesn't go particularly well, then their stuff is just getting spammed at me, and I'm going to kind of spam it back. This is going to be a fight with no formations whatsoever. I'm kind of just running forwards all over the place, the enemy are running all over the place. I was setting up here to try and do a rear attack on their archers, but there was too much stuff there so I didn't actually commit to doing it. We've got some horse archery out on the left where I'm just drawing away those orcs and gradually killing them. Gonna send our heavy cav to rear attack them while they're distracted by the horse archers. The rest of the fights are going to be a mixed bag. Some of them are going to involve our elite troops, so they'll be okay, but like our Dunedain wardens are going to be fighting things with similar stats to them, so not ideal. And here's something that's not ideal as well. One of my units in some way got rotated all the way around to be fighting the enemy on the other side, meaning the enemy had an easy rear attack and they did have some kind of heavy cav variant of the wargs to make that attack. Our only saving grace is that our unit has loads of defense, so they don't actually lose that many troops to the charge and the wargs go off somewhere else. Meanwhile my heavy cav are doing quite well against the enemy's archer block, which I'm now committing to attacking, trying to get the spears to fight their warg skirmishers. That's not going to happen. Instead I'm going to redirect them to go after the enemy's heavy wargs, while our mounted skirmishers go after their mounted skirmishers, assuming we'll win in a melee. We probably will. So now then we just need to grind the enemy down and try to get them to run away, and here's the ideal moment. We kill their captain and several of these smaller, already quite ground down groups start to get out of here. Now just need to micro the rest of the stuff, get a couple of rear attacks in, and even their better units will go. Then we chase them off the field because we hadn't actually killed enough to finish the battle. Eventually I check again and we've killed way too much. That's the end of that. An okay battle. We did lose more stuff, so our army's starting to be quite beaten up, especially in terms of melee tropes. It's not a very well composed army right now, but the Dunedain are probably saved, and Glorfindel is now a member of our family, which reduces the chance of us being kicked out of the game due to losing all of our family members, so that's always handy. There is actually another Angmar army next to where the Dunedain are. It's kind of hard to see it because it's so hidden behind lids of flags and stuff. But as it happens, here we are at the start of the next turn. It looks like the Dunedain did take the settlement. The Angmar force nearby was either defeated or walked off somewhere. So that's that, mission accomplished. Now I'm going back to my original mission, that is to go to that place up at the top right of the screen. We just need to work out if we can take that place without waiting for reinforcements, since waiting for reinforcements is a big deal as the elves. Before any of that though, the bad thing happens. Here we go back over at Mithlond. A big enemy army has appeared and is attacking Mithlond right now with no siege. They do have catapults, so they can go ahead and try to just break on in. We can see a couple of their units. They've got a bunch of experienced and upgraded stuff, including some good units with defense stats as good as ours, so that's a little bit worrying. Luckily, I do have an army here myself due to the forewarning, and the army does have a few particularly good units in it. Since they don't have siege equipment, my first thought was, can we stop the catapults from opening the walls up? So that's why I'm charging cav out as my very first move. Initially, the catapults just stood there, looks like they're taunting according to the tooltip. I thought maybe they'd fire at my horse archers, or I'd be able to charge in and take them out. What actually happened was, I got near, got swarmed with arrows and ran away, then the catapult started shooting at the gate. So my two cav units have gone to either side of the enemy army, and my initial plan has just come to nothing. We are going to let the enemy open the walls up and get this fight going. In the meantime, I am able to use my archers on the walls to bag a few early kills. This is a unit that's chasing my cav unit off to the side, and they can take a few casualties on the way, and then I'll just get them off into a corner somewhere and take them out using the cav. But in the meantime, those catapults are blasting away. We've now lost our gates and we're about to lose a bit of our wall. I wanted ideally to have our archers not be standing on the wall as it fell, but I encountered an issue. What appears to be the case is when an archer unit is standing on a wall, if the wall is hit by a catapult shot, it cancels their orders. That means, as you can see, they keep going from moving to firing at will or doing nothing, and overall they're not moving away from the danger zone. So that doesn't go very well. We end up losing a bunch of our good archers, and of course a breach has opened up, so now I need to adjust my infantry behind the wall to have that breach covered. Meanwhile, far away, I'm just being annoying with my Outrider cav. One unit is just leading the enemy off into the distance. The other unit is now charging into these light spears. Figured we can just kind of plow through them with cycle charges because this is one of the lower quality enemy units. I'm going to ultimately do the same thing with my horse archers here. Because they ran out of arrows, I thought we might as well just run at the guys who are chasing us and maybe it will take them out. Back in the city, I'm carefully looking around, trying to see if the catapults are damaging more parts of the wall. For a while they didn't, but then later they did, so there will be more destruction. Meanwhile, those spearmen who followed my cav off into the corner are trying to go back now. That's perfect because we can rear attack them. And now we've basically killed them. You might note that they've lost the vast majority of their unit and they're still fighting. This is going to be a classic Medieval 2 infinite morale battle because they have a high level commander who takes their morale above the point when they can ever be routed. We are going to have to kill pretty much everything or the commander to make much progress in this battle. Looks like we're about to lose another bit of wall, and again I'm trying to get these archers to not stand there and wait for it. Unfortunately you can see this movement cancelling in action. They stop moving every time a hit comes in. Maybe it's because the wall's like a navigation mesh is being changed by being deformed, so it just automatically cancels orders to avoid glitches or something. In this case we end up losing some of our archers. Luckily they're out of arrows at this point, so they weren't going to be too useful to us anyway. Again, that's another breach, so we need to form up with stuff behind it. And we are being stretched a bit thin because they're opening up so many breaches. We don't have that many melee troops to hold them all. A bit later, they're still firing at the same bit of wall. They're about to open up another breach next to the one they just did, and I'm trying to get my guys to cluster into the corner and try not to die quite so much. But it's just not that easy. We don't have that level of control, unfortunately. So we're going to lose a few more men, and we are going to have another breach to defend. At this stage, the enemy's catapult is likely running out of ammunition. I had this vague memory that a catapult has enough ammo to open up 2 breaches, so they should be able to get 4 in this battle, and if you include the gate I think they've got 4 now. Then again, my memory of that was from a different mod, so I'm not quite sure it's the same. But at this stage, they've got enough breaches to attack us, that's for sure. Their troops still aren't really doing anything, but they will soon. I was noting here that these archers are actually trapped because that tower next to them doesn't have an exit, so they're just going to be stuck there on the wall for the rest of the battle. And I was so distracted by that some enemy heavy spears went over and charged my cav off to the edge of the map. But then the enemy gave the order to start going into the town, and that included these heavy spears, meaning they turned around and I immediately charged right back at them and got this rear attack. This time though, this is one of their elite units, so even charging them with our elite units doesn't do all that much. So yes, now it's time for the reckoning. They're going to pour through these gaps and we're just going to have to start fighting them. As I said, routing them isn't going to be much of an option through kills, and because of our position, it's going to be pretty hard to surround the enemy or get rear attacks / flank attacks. So we can't rout them with that either. Not sure if that even would rout them in this case, so maybe that doesn't make any difference. But yeah, this is going to be a bloody one. I did have 2 units of pikes that were trying to block off a couple of the entrances, but they just didn't work in that they didn't like hold the enemy off with a pike phalanx, so they ended up just fighting in a close quarters melee. Not ideal, but that's just what this fight is now. We wait and rely on the fact that our troops must be on average better than theirs, even though we don't have as many. We have all these generals' bodyguards who have high stats, but I'm not committing them to the fight right away because I don't want the generals to die. But after all of our more replaceable things die, we've got them to fall back on. Looks like we've just about taken out that heavy spear unit out in the distance. They're constantly trying to run away from me rather than fight because I'm guessing the AI is trying to draw them into the main battle. So that's great, and my horse archers are now going to come over and attack those enemy catapults. They're not doing anything anymore, but killing them will add to the enemy's army losses and make things look a bit worse for them, I guess. So yes, now we wait. We are taking losses pretty fast, including some classic flashy numbers losses down there. But presumably so are the enemy. We can't really tell how fast the enemy are losing troops because it's not as clearly indicated. But things are holding on for the most part. I've got some Javelineers who I wanted to use very tactically to throw into some of their elite units like their general and bodyguard. But this utterly failed basically. I ended up pulling them out because they kept getting drawn into the melee. Then they ended up skirmishing with some enemy archers in the gateway there and getting killed as a result of it. They were losing that skirmish. But oh well. Now our cav are starting to get into the action. My lancers are setting up behind one of the enemy blobs, and our horse archers are currently working their way through that catapult crew. Thanks to all the horse archers' experience, they have the melee stats to do that just fine. Here was my big attack on the back of one of the enemy blobs, and as feared, it doesn't really do anything. Their morale doesn't go below eager at any point, and we don't get many kills, probably because we're going to be super tired at this point. There is one advantage to doing this though. Not only will we get the odd kill through charge bonus, we can make the enemy attack the cav. And you can see already some units are coming away from the fight to come and engage these cav units, and that's perfect because even if we just walk away, those enemy units are denied to their commander at the front line. In this case we're not going to just walk away like right here, just going to charge their spears with my heavy cav and hope that our stat differential allows us to take them down. Well, we do a bit of damage and we'll quickly get out of there. Luckily, because I don't need to do any micro for the main fight, I can micro the cycle charges just one after the other quite effectively. There's a not very effective charge for my horse archers, running into their stuff, doing precisely nothing and then running away. But again, it might act as a distraction. We're getting to the point in the fight when many of our frontline units are basically dead. You can see we've got plenty down to single figures. But our guys can't rout either because our faction leader's on the field. Our morale is sky high. That faction leader is now joining the fight with his massive bodyguard of Mithlond nobles. Those are the guys who have really high stats, like 30 something defense. So that's all good. Just don't want to risk him dying, which is why I waited until now to push him in. But on the balance bar you can see we're starting to win this battle. Getting to the stage when a sheer grind between two sides will allow us to win because our stuff's a bit better. Still microing the cav to perhaps some effect. Here on the front lines, it's actually starting to peter out. The enemy's numbers have dwindled a lot and they're mainly just left with their hard to kill units, their elite units, of which there aren't very many at this stage. So yes, we kind of have this one, and we would have it already if their general was dead. And soon enough, their general, who must be on the very front lines at this stage, does die. With that, all of the remaining stuff starts to rout, or most of the remaining stuff does, all of the lower quality stuff does, and will quickly chase them out. The breaches in the wall will channel them a bit and make it hard for them to escape, so we can grab some extra kills real fast, plus our cav are outside ready to chase down anyone trying to escape. And with that, this battle is going to rapidly swing into our favour. Ultimately, it's a victory without that much pressure being put on us actually. I expected to perhaps lose more of our general's bodyguards, but in many ways our most elite units didn't participate in the fight very much because I was constantly anticipating needing to use them desperately at the end, so that was fine. We did lose a bunch of stuff, but there's nothing else for that stuff to do, so I guess that's okay as well. The question is that the end of the invasion? My behaviour in this campaign is to assume that it is, because no one's tipped me off about there being any more invasions coming in, or this faction doing anything else with its naval power. And I'm looking around here thinking, is there anything we can use these troops for? I think in the past there was some rebel territory around here we could take, but the dwarves have taken it. So ultimately what I'll be doing is trying to put together an army from what we have left at Mithlond and bringing them over very slowly to the Imladris front. With our main army, we'll start moving towards our next target. There is a bit of incentive for me to wait here because I have some reinforcements on the way. Looking to the west, there's still some stuff going on over there, but I'm going to leave that to my allies. At the start of the next turn, we get a message informing us that I finished building the special blacksmith down at one of the places we captured earlier, the old elf kingdom or what have you. And this special smith will allow us to at some point recruit a special unit by the looks of things. We also get a unique blacksmith type general who is just basically another general for us. Here's some more pertinent news though. There's something about the Angmarim getting very angry at things. And long story short, this is going to be another classic Third Age Total War free army spawn. Here's the new character that got spawned. He is going to rush off to go garrison a nearby city to make us some money for now. And up north I was looking around and did see that there is indeed a full stack of enemy troops just kind of chilling in a random location here. Looks like it's packed with good troops as well, as expected of a freely spawned stack. So now they might be able to stop us from taking the nearby territory, or they could come down to the east and do some damage. Wasn't quite sure what to do, so for now we're just going to sit on this bridge and not fully advance into enemy territory. We do though have a new weapon to play with. We've got our Noldor veteran troops who we can extremely rarely recruit. They've been gradually walking up from Rivendell. So we have some really good troops in the army now, just a few of them. The other units are not in ideal condition, but that's still a pretty good looking army, so maybe enough to challenge the high quality spawned stack. Here's my force moving out from the west, so I've got this nearly half stack of troops together. They would help out if we had them on the other side of the map, so they're going to start walking. Going to be at least like 5 or 6 turns before they're anywhere near anything interesting. So I guess we'll come back to that if it helps out at some point. Now here we are at the start of the next turn, where the enemy's big army didn't move over towards their settlement like I thought they might. Instead, they're down here. Obviously I figured this might happen because I've actually prepared for it by the looks of things. I don't remember doing this, but I've moved all of the troops, or most of the troops, at that Litash place already back down to Mount Graham, so I'm forming up to defend under Elrond here, and Litash is just being used as a sacrificial area. Ideally, we won't lose them, but my main force of course can't catch up, so we're at their mercy. As it turns out, what they do is turn around, walk up to my main force, and then don't attack it. That's kind of ideal because now we don't lose any territory and we don't potentially lose that battle. I was looking for a better battle than a straight up field engagement like a bridge fight for example, or a siege defense, since the enemy do have some good stuff, and chances are when I go to try and take that Angmar settlement, we're going to face more freely spawned stuff and some good units inside, so what we can't afford is a massive clash where we lose a whole bunch of our army. With that in mind, I just sat around in a fort for the next turn, and interestingly the enemy army went back to where it was when it spawned. Not sure why, especially since it went off-road. It can't have been trying to go anywhere in particular. So that's interesting, and it made me think maybe we don't need to worry about that stack, because at this stage Angmar only have that one settlement. We can take it to turn their stack into a rebel army and then just ignore it, and that's probably the most elf life-saving way of going about this. Here's my spy checking out what used to be an Angmar settlement. It looks like the dwarves are pushing in from the west, so things are all good for us to actually move up along the west side of that last region they have, staying out of the movement range of the enemy's main force, and maybe sneaking in for a siege attack while the enemy get distracted trying to take Mount Graham or something, and just destroying their faction before anything goes too wrong. So that's the new official plan. First though, there was this small army that had siege stuff in it, and they have the potential to go south and take that territory down there, so we do need to take them out. The balance bar's super in our favour, but we need a very clean victory ready for our upcoming trials, so manually resolved this one. I rushed forward because the enemy's siege equipment is going to outrange us, and we don't want to get hit by it too much, and indeed we do start getting hit by it. Like right here we take a direct hit among our Noldor archers, the guys who are super hard to get, and before they've even done anything after their 30 turns of gradually showing up on the front line, they just instantly die. That's probably not the best thing for an elf. Anyway, we're going to press in as hard as we can and try to get all of the crews into melee. Thus my ballista actually takes out one of their catapults there, didn't expect that. Everything else they have isn't particularly good, so there is no worries really just running forwards and forcing all of the melee fights to get started early. It would be better in this situation to wait and shoot the enemy to death, but because the enemy are doing that to us with their siege stuff, we're not going to do that. Everything melts away apart from one unit. They did have a general in this force with those witch knights, so we're going to have to grind him to death from all sides. Luckily he goes into fighting to the death mode, and as I've mentioned, I think that's glitched. I think it doesn't work in that when you're in fighting to the death mode you can't do any damage, so they will just not get any kills and gradually die. Anyway, we kill him. That's that, and the battle was a relatively easy win in the end. I was just annoyed that of the very small number of troops we lost, they were the troops that were a really long time coming, and certainly aren't going to come back, maybe even before the end of this campaign. I don't know, those Noldor troops take a while. So once that's done, it's time to go ahead with the plan. I'm going to move off-road deliberately to stay out of the movement range of their main stack, and hope that stack goes somewhere else. Well, here we are at the start of the next turn. It didn't work even a little bit. The main stack came over, as did a whole bunch of other stuff. They've got a swarm of troops in this area. Now at this stage, my plan actually can still work, but in a move which makes me furious right now, I didn't realise this. We have a ballista in this army, so I can actually just go up to that town right there, use the ballista to open the gate, and just force my way in, and that would destroy their faction and get rid of all of this stuff right here. However, for whatever reason, I didn't think that was an option, so I was still going ahead with my plan of trying to buy some time by getting them to go somewhere else, time enough to make a ram, and then doing that, going into the castle plan. And that's why I just hid the force and barely moved this turn. In response, Angmar send a small army to go and besiege the neighbouring settlement, and their big army sees my hidden force by the looks of things, and comes over to fight. So this didn't work at all. We actually had a really cheeky chance to end the Angmar war right then. I totally missed it, didn't even think of it at the time as far as I remember. I even seem to remember thinking if only I did have some siege equipment, then I would go and do that, and thinking how long would it take for me to make a catapult and bring it up, things like that. Not thinking about the fact that I actually did have a piece of siege equipment in this army. So the long story short there is the big battle against their main army that I wanted to avoid with some exploits actually does happen. So at the start of the next part, we're going to have another classic decisive battle to decide the fate of Middle-earth, featuring some enemy armoured trolls as well, so that should be interesting. Join me next time for that.